The artist formerly known as Kanye West has been doing an apology tour. He goes by Ye now. He's gone through a lot of changes in his life. I used to be a fan of Ye's music, to be honest. I got into him pretty late. I got into him in like 2015, and I got really into him. And for several years, especially 2017, 2018, I listened to his music a lot. I went back through the catalog, of course, a lot of great stuff from early in his career, College Dropout, and so on. And then I really loved the new stuff. I mean, the Life of Pablo album had several extremely unique, very interesting songs. I loved the way he made beats. Just like kind of very unique producer. I always thought his rap was quite not good. From before I got into him to being into him, I was like he was always more of like an iconic lyricist rather than like a talented lyricist. Like, you know, but that's him, and he would say things in interesting ways. It was just like, I don't know, his voice and similar. I sort of feel the same way about Jay-Z, except he's not I don't think he's a great producer. But it was just like certain rappers, I'm just like, I never really connect with them. I much prefer like Kendrick Lamar. I got into Pusha T after getting into Kanye West. And I like 2 Chainz. I like, Kendrick's definitely my favorite. But yeah, I've always liked rap. I mean, I honestly have a big interest in rap and lyrics and stuff. So I just never really liked Kanye or Ye's rap, but I did always feel like his music production was quite good and very unique and special. And like a lot of the songs, Bound too, like a lot of different songs, I was like, damn, this is like incredibly good. And then his album Ye, I really loved. I listened to that over and over and over. Or what was it? I forget if it was called Ye or like it was Ye, but then the cover was like, I hate being bipolar, it's awesome, or something like that. So kind of connects to what he's about to talk about in this letter. That album was amazing. I mean, he was like still married at that time with the Kardashian or whatever, and it was clearly like he was kind of a little bit of he had problems. He was a tortured artist in some ways, and like it was kind of clear from the way he talked about his marriage that it like probably wasn't going that great. It felt like he was trying to convince himself that he was going to be all right to like sort of fit into this role. But, I don't want to, I'm just kind of giving you a background here about my perspective. But, yeah, I listened to that album like almost exclusively for months. I listened to it so much. I loved it. It was only like 4 or 5 songs, and I just like could listen to it nonstop. Everything about it, I was like, this is incredibly good. Then his album, his work with Pusha T was incredible. His work with Teyana Taylor, some other stuff around that time period, 2017 or whatever, just incredibly good stuff. Really good time. I'm trying to remember like where he was at politically, because I feel like during Trump's first run or term, he was certainly already saying stuff like, "Oh, Trump's got dragon energy. He's got fucking dragon energy, bruh." And it was like, okay. You mean he's like a strongman? Is that what you're saying? He's a strongman? Is that what you're saying? And I don't care about Kanye West as a judge of character. I mean, I don't think I never would have thought of him as like, oh, he knows people, Not really. I mean, he did know that George W. Bush doesn't care about black people, but that's like really obvious. I don't think you have to be a super wise person to know that. It was very cool that he said that, though. That was a great moment. And, Kanye West obviously did this whole thing where he came out and said black people, like, were responsible for their own enslavement. Like, they should have just, fought back. Like, very, like stuff that was clearly not coming from someone of sound mind. Like, really. I mean, really, like, genuinely. And he was always, like, clearly worked up when he was talking about things. It was, it came out that he had gone through, like, drug addiction and recovery and, and had bipolar disorder and had genuine, like, mental health challenges. And so these statements that he would make, it was sort of like, okay, well, it's hard to like the guy anymore, but I don't necessarily hate him. You know, he's just like struggling and kind of like desperate for attention. A lot of this, you know, was just so clearly unwell, but it didn't matter. I mean, he lost his fans, you know. Last album I listened to by him, I listened to Jesus is King, and I still was into it. Like, I fucking listened to Jesus is King, like, a lot, even though it's a crazy album that, like, has almost any of the songs are, like, have, like, issues and, like, have, like, maybe one good part. But, like, and I'm, you know, I'm not Christian, but, like, I was into it. I'm like, this is great. And I you know, I like, okay, he wants to stop cursing. He wants to, like, do like religious music. Like, all right, like I'm all for artists doing whatever they want, and it honestly had some good stuff going for it. You know, it really did. It had some good songs. And then I listened to the first Donda album, a bit of it, and there were like one or two good songs, but you know, as time went on, it was like he's just had so much baggage, and you know, and even you can't really separate the art from the artist. Certainly, as time went on, and he, you know, got even more, you know, anti-Semitic, and he made songs about hailing Hitler. That was, you know, I never listened to that one, and you know, I watch a lot of videos and stuff. People talk about things like that. I just skip over it. I don't, you know, I don't care about people's analysis about Hail Hitler song. You know, I'm not interested in it. That's the thing, and that's probably why I didn't get to this until a couple of weeks later. There's something very boring to me about anti-Semitism. It's just like I'm Jewish. I get, like, I understand a lot of the history of anti-Semitism, and I get where it's coming from. And it's just kind of old. It's like, it's not really interesting, especially when someone has mental health issues like this. Because it almost seems like, it's like if you're watching an improv sketch and then the joke is just that one of the characters is on LSD or is like drunk. That's not that funny. You know what I mean? If their behavior is, so if his behavior is largely explained by mental health issues, which it often did fairly seem to be, it's really uninteresting, especially when he's just like rehashing anti-Semitism. It's just sort of like, oh, okay, like you're doing a very kind of like boring thing that's been done a bunch of times, and then you're doing it out of a desperate, sick need for some sort of attention that's coming from a really unwell place. Like, there's just, it's sort of just not interesting. It's like double not interesting, because it's like, I don't need to examine the motivations here. Yeah, I don't know. So, but, you know, with him apologizing, and then, so I forget the exact timeline, but like, you know, he like made all these statements about like, I'm gonna like go DEFCON 3 on the Jews or something like that. Okay, that's like kind of unique as far as anti-Semitism goes. And so he, you know, and you saw a lot of right-wing people being like, well, Kanye's kind of got a point about the Jews, you know what I mean? And then I love this thing people do. they never stop doing this, where like someone does like you know, really racist or anti-Semitic stuff. Especially the thing with anti-Semitism, because the whole trope is like Jews control everything. So people will do stuff like play Hail Hitler or make a song called Hail Hitler and so on. And then they'll be like, well, don't you think it's interesting that people get so upset about this? Doesn't that kind of prove, if there's such a big reaction by the whole world when I play my Hail Hitler song, don't you think that kind of means that reaction kind of shows that actually the song's necessary? That actually, because the song gets such a reaction, that means the reaction shows that the need for that song is there because the Jews control everything, and that's why people react that way. It's not because they fairly unifiedly, you know, think my views are deleterious to the world. It's because they must be kind of ordered by a Jewish individual or you know, a cadre. So anyways, you know, haven't really been a huge fan of Kanye or Ye, and you know, and after he apologized for the sort of like that era of anti-Semitism, it unfortunately, that was before the Hail Hitler song. So like the timeline's getting a little bit vague here, and that's my fault. But So I don't remember. I think he apologized for like the DEFCON 3 stuff, and then it lasted like not even a few months. But he was very quickly actually escalating his anti-Semitic rhetoric, which is really bad. I mean, anti-Semitic stuff is really bad, especially in this time period where we have a state called Israel pretending it represents the Jews and committing genocide. And then people get to kind of criticize Israel and then sort of loop it in with anti-Semitism and try to act like they're getting points to support their anti-Semitic beliefs because there's this state saying they're the state of the Jews doing horrible things. And it's, so it's scary to me to see anti-Semitism because we see the concept of anti-Semitism being used to justify genocide, saying, "Oh, Jews need an ethno state because of all this anti-Semitism, so they get to do whatever they need to for this ethno state," which is a horrible argument. But it's because of that weaponization of the concept of anti-Semitism, actual anti-Semitism is very dangerous. It can easily be kind of misunderstood or not really noticed because there's so much abuse of the term anti-Semitism, and then that actual anti-Semitism can score points for itself by criticizing the state of Israel, which deserves endless amounts of criticism, but is not getting enough criticism from the U.S. media, because the U.S. media is run by Zionists, some of whom are Jewish, but obviously there is an enormous number of Zionists who are not Jewish. Mike Huckabee, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris. Like, there's a lot of people who are Zionists who are not Jewish, and probably way more. Way more. And so, so Zionism is a huge problem. And, why our country is run by Zionists is a complicated issue. It has to do with the role of this collaboration in geopolitical space and so on. But anyways, I've been talking for 15 minutes, haven't looked at the apology. So this is the most recent apology Ye wrote about his time in the last few years or so on, and it's basically So it says, "To those I've hurt." There's a paid advertisement in Wall Street Journal. He says, 25 years ago, I was in a car accident that broke my jaw. So already that's a horrible, horrible way to start the letter. And I want to say from the beginning, I am coming at this with a place of like, I always lean towards understanding and accepting people apologizing, accepting an apology. You don't have to forgive someone to accept an apology, and you can forgive someone without like a blanket. Forgiveness is obviously not a approval of their behavior. So I feel perfectly able to, first of all, accept his apology, and second of all, to forgive him, frankly, and to say, okay, like I just want you to know that's how I'm predisposed. I hope I end this by saying, great, thanks, Ye. Let's see, keep up this vibe for a few months, at least for a few years. And that's all. And that's you're good, forgiven. That's the way I'm leaning. So let's see. But I will say, starting it by saying 25 years ago, if the rest of that sentence doesn't have to do with Jews, like 25 years ago, I was indoctrinated by this person into hating Jews. Great. That's a great start because that helps us understand where you're coming from. 25 years ago, I was in a car accident is already framing yourself as the victim. And I don't think that's a cool thing to do when you're starting an apology letter. I don't think it's useful. 25 years ago, I was in a car accident that broke my jaw and caused injury to the right frontal lobe of my brain. At the time, the focus was on the visible damage, fracture, swelling, and the immediate physical trauma. The deeper injury, the one inside my skull, went unnoticed. Comprehensive scans were not done, neurological exams were limited, and the possibility of a frontal lobe injury was never raised. It wasn't properly diagnosed until 2023. That medical oversight caused serious damage to my mental health and led to my bipolar type 1 diagnosis. So he's saying he didn't have bipolar? That sounds like he's saying he didn't have bipolar, and it's the medical oversight that led to the diagnosis. That's interesting because you could easily have brain damage and bipolar. But now he is saying he has bipolar disorder, so I think he just phrased that in a confusing way. So the medical oversight didn't lead to the diagnosis, technically, if you're also saying the diagnosis was correct, but okay. Bipolar disorder comes with its own defense system, denial. Okay. Okay. I don't want to be a dick, but that's just not a super useful. Denial is just a thing that happens in for anyone. But okay, bipolar disorder, people with bipolar disorder absolutely can be in denial about the diagnosis. And yes, this is very true about when you're manic, you don't think you're sick. Yeah. You think everyone else is overreacting. You feel like you're seeing the world more clearly than ever, when in reality, you're losing your grip entirely. So, okay, we are now 3 paragraphs in, and it's all framing himself as a victim. I mean, I hate to say it, like, he's just not even addressed hurting people yet. He says, once people label you as crazy, you feel as if you cannot contribute anything meaningful to the world. It's easy for people to joke and laugh it off when, in fact, this is a very serious, debilitating disease you can die from. According to the World Health Organization and Cambridge University, people with bipolar disorder have a life expectancy that is shortened by 10 to 15 years on average, and 2 to 3 higher all-cause mortality than the general population. This is on par with severe heart disease, type 1 diabetes, HIV, and cancer, all lethal and fatal if left untreated. This is bizarre. This is not an apology letter. This is bizarre to write how many words, 4 paragraphs. When are we going to get to the apology? You could address this stuff in 1 sentence if you were serious about not playing the victim. The scariest thing about this disorder is how, and don't get me out of context here, like, it's not playing the victim to say all this stuff. It's playing the victim to say all this stuff in an apology letter. The scariest thing about this disorder is how persuasive it is when it tells you don't need help. It makes you blind. Convinced you have insight. You feel powerful, certain, and unstoppable. I lost touch with reality. Things got worse the longer I ignored the problem. I said and did things I deeply regret. So in an apology, you should be specific. It is, I think, rude to put the burden of interpretation on the receiver of the apology. You should be specific. And you know why people aren't specific? Because it hurts, because they're still in denial about the things they did. And they don't want to be specific because it makes it real. It makes it more obvious. It makes it clear. But you should be specific when you make apologies. You should be specific. Otherwise, you're being cowardly and you're hiding from accountability. Maybe we'll get more specifics. Let's see. Some of the people I love the most, I treated the worst. You endured fear, confusion, humiliation, and the exhaustion of trying to love someone who was at times unrecognizable. Looking back, I became detached from my true self. In that fractured state, I gravitated towards the most destructive symbol I could find, the swastika, and even sold t-shirts bearing it. Here we go. Here we go. This should have been the second paragraph. This is great. Now he's getting into specifics, and there's some there's not rationalization in a bad way, but there's some explanation of his rationale there. That makes sense, that someone in a fractured state would gravitate towards some sort of extreme destructive symbol. Everything else loses its salience. And selling t-shirts, he's being specific. You know, it would be good to say, instead of one of the difficult aspects of having bipolar type 1, like, we remember that you have bipolar disorder, dude. You don't have to mention it again, like, in multiple paragraphs. You could instead use that sentence to say what you think the negative consequences are of selling swastika t-shirts. Why don't you give 3 or 4 sentences to what the negative consequences might have been of selling swastika t-shirts? Instead, he says, one of the difficult aspects of having bipolar type 1 are the disconnected moments, many of which I still cannot recall, that lead to poor judgment and reckless behavior that oftentimes feels like, well, you did just recall one, so it would be good to talk more at length about it. I regret and am deeply mortified by my actions in that state and am committed to accountability, treatment, and meaningful change. It does not excuse what I did, though. I am not a Nazi or an anti-Semite. I love Jewish people. Okay, I mean, to be honest, like, I believe that he's not a Nazi or an anti-Semite and that he loves Jewish people and that a lot of this was motivated by mental health issues. I do believe that. I do. I mean, this is probably true of a lot of anti-Semitic people. Like, if a lot of anti-Semitic people had, like, the support that someone like Kanye West probably has, like, people to consistently be like, come on, like, no, this is not you, like, come on. Like, it probably, like, people's ideas aren't necessarily fixed in a lot of ways. As far as apologies go, though, It's very, very not helpful to be like, I'm not a Nazi. Well, it's good to say I'm not a Nazi or an anti-Semite. Saying I love Jewish people, super not helpful. Don't appreciate that at all. As a Jewish person, I don't want to hear that. It's not about whether you love us. Like, it's completely meaningless. Focus on how your actions created negative situations for people in more than just like one sentence. But really, the real thing is this going to stick? That's the real thing. To the black community, which held me down throughout all the highs and lows and the darkest of times. Yeah, I mean, he lost an enormous amount of support of the black community because he's just been hurting. He's been saying extremely racist stuff and anti-black stuff as well as anti-Semitic stuff. The black community is unquestionably the foundation of who I am. I'm so sorry to have let you down. I love us. Look, I don't want to speak for the black community, but it would probably be good to be specific how you let people down. In early 2025, I fell into a 4-month-long manic episode of psychotic, paranoid, and impulsive behavior that destroyed my life. As the situation became increasingly unsustainable... Oh, I should say the context of him releasing this specifically after some of the far-right streamer, like, live streaming Goebbels little boys that he, like, palled around with have gotten called out for playing his song Hail Hitler in a club somewhere, and a bunch of these right-wing losers got actually banned from clubs for playing Kanye West's Hail Hitler song multiple times and, like, you know, giving their little Nazi salute that they, you know, learned from Elon Musk and stuff like that. And you know, so that's the impetus. Unless I'm getting the timeline wrong, that's actually the impetus for this. Kanye West being like, "Whoa, those live streaming Goebbels guys, like, really were influenced by my Hail Hitler song. Maybe I overstepped." He says at times he didn't want to be here anymore. Okay. It's not really necessary to mention stuff like that in an apology letter. You've had months to think about how you express this. Having bipolar disorder is not a state of constant mental illness. When you go into the manic episode... So he's just doing psychoeducation. Half of this letter is just psychoeducation about bipolar disorder. Oh, he's not saying bipolar type 1 now. He's just saying bipolar disorder. It's just weird that he kept saying type 1. Like, yeah, they're different types, but, like, you don't need to use your apology letter to, like, inform people about the intricacies of bipolar disorder. When you go into the manic episode, you are ill at that point. When you are not in an episode, you are completely normal. What about the other pole? What about when you're depressed? What? And when, like, you're ill when you're also depressed, too. And that's when the wreckage from the illness hits the hardest. Hitting rock bottom a few months ago, my wife encouraged me to finally get help. I have found comfort in Reddit forums of all places. Uh-oh. Different people speak of being in manic or depressive episodes of a similar nature. I read their stories and realized that I was not alone. It's not just me who ruins their entire life once a year despite taking meds every day and being told by the so-called best doctors in the world that I am not bipolar but merely experiencing symptoms of autism. What are you talking about, dude? Like, why did that not come up earlier in the letter and you're just dropping it here? And, like, why are you putting it in quotes? Why are you putting it in quotes? Like, I mean, people don't always say symptoms when they talk about autism, and they might, I don't know the exact common thing. Like, maybe people would just talk about, like, aspects of the condition, but, like, you could call it symptoms. I mean, it's, like, a little bit complicated because people don't often think of autism as a, like, disease that has symptoms, but, you know, you could say there are symptoms, there are aspects of autism similar to, there are aspects of generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD, or anything. But this is just bizarre that he's just randomly dropping this here and in quotes. But, like, I thought the whole thing was that they misdiagnosed you as bipolar, but you actually had brain damage. But in fact, you did have brain damage, you're saying. You are also bipolar, but you were misdiagnosed as autistic, which is just out of nowhere here. And I don't know why you need to rail against the medical establishment over and over in your apology letter. That could probably be, just make a song about it. I don't know. It's, like, not relevant to your apology. It is playing the victim to constantly be like, well, here's how everyone's hurt me in my apology letter. I'm just going to talk about how everyone's worked against me. He says, my words as leader in my community you're not a leader, bro, in any community, except you are trying to extricate yourself now from the only community you've been a leader in the last few years, which is Nazis. And good for you, frankly. Good for you. Better late than never. My words as a leader in my community have real global impact and influence. Yes, it'd be good for you to say what that is. You barely did that in this entire letter, Ye. What was the influence of those anti-Semitic t-shirts? What it was the influence of the song you made that you didn't even fucking want to mention here? Also, maybe mention the context of why you're making your apology. Why don't you do that? Wouldn't that have been a good idea? Oh, I saw that all these like little cowardly loser right-wing live streaming Goebbels kids were playing my Hail Hitler song at a club, and it made me realize the effects of my actions. Why didn't that make it into the letter? Even if that wasn't the impetus, wouldn't you want to mention that? Wouldn't you want to mention more specific examples of this global impact? That's the whole point of an apology, to address what you did and what you caused, and then what led to it, and then what you will do to make it not happen again. As I find my new baseline and new center through an effective regime of medication, and this is part of this paragraph that I'm reading now is part of how he's saying it won't happen again, and that's perfectly valid. Medication, therapy, exercise, and clean living, I have newfound much needed clarity. I'm pouring my energy into positive, meaningful art, music, clothing, design, and other new ideas to help the world. I would, instead of saying it that way, I would say I'm doing these things to help me not fall into these bad habits. Like, you should emphasize how it relates to making sure the bad behaviors don't happen again, not just like how happy you are to find this newfound lease on life. I'm not asking for sympathy or a free pass, though I aspire to earn your forgiveness. Okay, yeah, those are separate concepts. I write today simply to ask for your patience and understanding as I find my way home. Okay, mid. Very mid. I would give that a, like I said, happy to accept the apology. I do accept the apology, and I do look forward to Kanye, or to Ye, not reverting like he did last time. So keep it up for a few months, keep it up for a few years, and maybe, I think he actually has continued making apologies, which is good. I believe I saw that he was going on talk shows or this or that and making apologies. I could be wrong about that, but I think he said, which is good. That's important to do, to understand that apologizing is a process. It's not a one-time thing. You make amends over and over and over. An apology is just one aspect of making amends. He will have to make amends in more significant ways, not fucking donating to the ADL or something. I hope he didn't do that, but you know what I mean? Like, genuine amends where he shows that he understands the impacts of his actions, maybe works to support, it would be cool if he supported like anti-Zionist Jewish anti-Zionist organizations, help dispel the false associations between Israel and Jews that both Israel and global anti-Semitic people are, interested in proliferating. But overall, I'd give this even just like I accept the apology and so on, but I would give this like a C. Like a C minus. This was like quite not good as an apology letter. Just like, I'm not trying to say that to give him a hard time. Like, if you're looking at this and you're thinking about your own apologizing in your life, like, it should not be like this. A C, not a C minus. This is mid. He's like showing up for the apology for sure. It's not like he's rejecting everything, but it was very vague. And he did not spend enough time. He spent way too much time talking about the external factors that influenced him and not enough time talking about how he affected the external world. So that's pretty much it. And I'm not going to listen to his music because I don't like his voice and I'm not interested in hearing anything he makes. But in a few years, if he keeps this up, maybe I'll change my mind. This is a podcast or something.